Is there math in medical coding? Well, I've used a fair amount of math in my medical coding career, but that's not the case for all coders. So let me talk to you today about what kind of math might be involved in medical coding, what is the difficulty level, and if you stick around, I'm actually going to give you a few sample cases so you can see exactly what I'm talking about. Hey everyone, I'm Victoria. I'm a medical coder, auditor, educator, content creator, national speaker, and Pokemon Go enthusiast, and on my channel I provide tips, tricks, and tutorials to help you be successful in a medical coding career. Today's video is sponsored by OnlineDegree.com. OnlineDegree.com is one of the easiest resources you can use to find a great medical coding school specifically for you. I partner with OnlineDegree.com to help my viewers find the best medical billing and coding school for them. They have custom built a quiz with the same questions I would ask you. Where are you located? How much are you looking to spend? How much time do you have to dedicate? And when do you want to be done? And then they help field you to the right medical coding school for all of your needs. There's also some great discounts and features that you may qualify for, but only if you use my link, which is go.onlinedegree.com/contempo. Let's talk about math in medical coding, and I will fully confess that I am not a big math person. I got lost basically past algebra in high school. I was okay with geometry, but for the most part, I am not into trigonometry and calculus and all that kind of math stuff. So I definitely sympathize when people are asking me questions like how much math is really involved in medical coding. So there is math involved in medical coding, but only in a couple of sections. And actually, depending on what kind of coding you're doing, you might not encounter much math at all. Probably the biggest section that involves math would be in the integumentary system when you're calculating things like laceration sizes or skin grafts. So that primarily is things like plastic surgery, dermatology, and wound care. So if you're not coding for those particular services, you're not going to see as much math as the people that are in those specialties. Also, there's types of coding like risk adjustment where you just work with ICD-10-CM coding. And since the math is mostly in CPT, if you're working risk adjustment, you probably won't be working as much with math in that capacity. Now, I already told you I'm not big into calculus or trigonometry, but thankfully most of the math that's involved in medical coding is simple addition, subtraction, division, and multiplication. It's not anything super complex. Let's dive into the CPT book, and I can show you a couple of examples so you know exactly what you're getting into if you're not interested in doing any math, or if you're going to accept just a little bit of math, because honestly, it's not a ton of math. And again, depending on what specialty you're doing, if you're doing cardiology, you might not encounter much at all. So if we look here in our integumentary system, with repairs, they're coded based off of length. So this one's 2.5, 2.6 to 7.5, and you can group these together. So you sum the lengths for repairs of each group of anatomical sites. So this one we have scalp, axilla, trunk, and or extremities, excluding the hands and feet. So let's say we have one of the scalp and one of the axilla. And let's say we have one that's 2 centimeters and we have one that's 3 centimeters. In that case, we'll have to add them to get the total length for our code. So that's just our basic math. 2 and 3 equals 5 centimeters. And then we would go to our book and say, okay, here we go. So that's 5 centimeters. So it would be this code because it's in this range here. There's also some calculations involved in lesion coding. In order to get the size that you're going to use for your medical code, you have to figure out the total excise diameter of a lesion. So you have to take the widest area of the lesion and then add on the margins. So again, just pretty basic math stuff. So here we're taking, this is the longest area here, the 1.5 versus the 1, and then adding on the margins on each side. So 1.5 plus 0.3 plus 0.3, and that gives us the total excise diameter that we use for our code selection. And again, this is just skin coding. So if you're not working in skin, you won't be encountering this much at all. And then we have a lot of things like skin grafts or rotation flaps where they're calculated by square centimeters. So you can see here, it's the first square centimeters and then each additional 100 square centimeters or part thereof. So the provider documentation typically doesn't have the square centimeters, they just give you the size. So they'll tell you, okay, we had a graft placed, a split thickness skin graft, and it was, 20 by 15. So you'll have to figure out, okay, what is that size? So essentially you just get out your calculator, 20 times 15 is 300, and that means it would be 300 square centimeters. So we would bill 1 unit of this first 100 and then 2 units for each additional. So 15120, 15121 times 2. And then even if we had like 1 each additional, so each part thereof is coded as an extra 100 square centimeter add-on code, so we would bump that unit up to 3. So it's not super complex math. It's not like you're calculating for X, but you do have to do some calculations for square centimeters for some of the graphs, and then convert them into units. Now there is one other area where you also might have to calculate into units, but it's a little bit more simple. And this one requires a different book, so let me get out my HCPCS book. So the other area where there is a little bit of math is in some drug calculations. So for example here, if we look at this code J3301 for Kenalog, it's billed based off of 10 milligrams. So we would have to calculate if a provider did more than 10 milligrams, say they did 40 milligrams, we would have to know how many units of Kenalog do we bill. So 40 divided by 10 is 4, right? So in that case, we would bill 4 units of the J3301. So J3301 times 4. So for example, this code here is billed by 25 milligrams. So if the provider is doing 50, that would be 2 units. If they're doing 75, that would be 3 units. So there's a little bit of calculations there with the drug codes as well to make sure that you're billing the right amount of units of that code. So there you have it. It's just basic arithmetic that you have to do in medical coding. Now, there might be some positions that are more elaborate where you have to do calculations on spreadsheets, but in a general medical coding position, there's not usually a ton of math involved. And if you're working in something like cardiology or radiology, there's probably not much math at all. I hope you found this video helpful. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. I will see you guys in the next video. And until then, you just keep on coding on.